What's going on, my friends, my family, my fellow gamers? Is your boy PorterRock77, your only friends in these YouTube streets, back with another video. So just to start off, tune in sometime maybe late next week or something like that. I'll give my Days Gone impression and stuff like that. But usually my impression is not usually based on the first 30 minutes or an hour. Hopefully I could get some quality gaming time this week behind the game. So far the reviews haven't been too good. There's some impressions from other gamers talking about they like it, some mixed bag and stuff like that. But just like what I did with a few games, I'll give my impression. The reason why I'll give my impressions for Days Gone is because it's an open world game. And many of them, I ain't gonna say many of them, but some of them haven't been faring too well. If people saw a video on my Red Dead Redemption review, I did not like that game at all. And I was afraid that there's potential that I might suffer the same dislike with Days Gone. Some of the impressions I'm seeing have some similarities, but I'll play it for myself and I'll let you know how I feel about the game in the future, right? But this video is about the insane slavery behind power, all right? And we're gonna use some facts to finally cut the bullshit on this whole power narrative, right? So as you know, about 2 weeks ago, Mark Cerny had an interview, came out with some information to confirm the specs of PS5, not to break down the numbers, but just gave us a little bit of information so we could get some final confirmation on things. For example, PlayStation 5 will have a GPU based on Navi. It's going to use the Zen Core, Ryzen CPU. It's going to have solid state drive as its main component instead of hard drive, things like that. 3D audio, next generation, they're working on 3D audio. So we got some bit of information, right? So now, as you start seeing, everybody has insider work confirming the next Xbox is the most powerful platform. It's already confirmed, Keep in mind, we don't know the official specs on anything. There's no official confirmation behind Xbox Anaconda, but it's just consistent talk about, oh no, it's guaranteed power, all right? So let's cut the bullshit, all right, on this one, okay? Now, I'm looking forward to the next PlayStation 5 and seeing the next gen architecture in relation to the games, because at the end of the day, all this power, it doesn't matter what architecture you're running, or how much power you have, it has to translate into the games, because that's ultimately the point, okay? So now, how do I segue into this conversation? IGN recently released an image showing the highest selling platforms of all time. And the majority of those platforms, the top sellers, are not the most powerful. So we're going to go down the line. All right, the number one selling platform, and it's a mixture of consoles and handhelds. So the number one selling platform of all time, according to IGN, the PlayStation 2 with 159 million. All right, that platform was also the one that sold the most games, but it wasn't the most powerful of that generation. The Nintendo GameCube, right, and the OG Xbox One, the Xbox, OG Xbox, they both were much more powerful than the PlayStation 2. Yet the PlayStation 2 was the primary platform that most people play games on in terms of home consoles, and it's where most of the games have been played, and it's where most of the games have been bought. Power? Okay, the next item, the next platform, that's the second highest, is the Nintendo DS at 154 million. Now, by default, being a handheld is weaker than the consoles, okay? But within its own realm, within its own stake of being a handheld, it was still the weakest because the PlayStation Portable was the most powerful handheld during that competition, right? And what's funny is the PSP was really Sony's first message telling people to try to get console quality gaming, right? With graphics and stuff like that in a handheld. So Sony tried to push that first, right? Well, not really. Not really, because Sega did that with the Game Gear. Okay, so yeah, so it wasn't really Sony. But PSP still had that message. Hey, let's try to get console quality gaming, right, on a handheld. And Nintendo DS completely dominated. In fact, DS dominated so much, it's the second highest selling platform, right, in gaming, okay? Another example. Number 3, the third highest selling platform. The Game Boy Color family, 119 million. And again, around that time, you saw more powerful handhelds. I think Game Gear was trying to raise up or message things about coming up and stuff like that. None of that mattered. A black and white handheld ended up selling over 100 million. Then they added the Game Boy Color later on. It just goes to show you You know what I'm saying? That power is not very reflective. The next item, the fourth highest selling platform, the PlayStation, the PS1, at 103 million. Another platform that was not the most powerful of its generation, because the N64 was a much more powerful platform. It had better graphics. You know, Nintendo created a better, graphically better platform. But yet, most people played PlayStation 1. It sold the most. It sold the most games. And then finally, to round off the top five, the Nintendo Wii. The weakest console of that whole entire generation. In fact, it wasn't even HD, because during that generation, the three platforms for that gen was the Xbox 360, the PlayStation 3, and the Nintendo Wii. And Nintendo Wii was the non-HD platform. It was still doing SD gaming. The 360 and the PS3 push high-definition gaming. Yet, that is the only platform that came out of that gen with over 100 million sales. Despite the fact that overall 360 and PS3 sold pretty well, they both sold 80 million apiece. Yet somehow we still was able to capture over 100 million audience. So the top five platforms, if you look at it, are some of the weakest consoles of gaming in their respective gens. Right? And on this list, some of the most powerful consoles of their gen of all time is not even on the list. They didn't even bother. They round out the list with Nintendo 64 at 34 million. And after that, they stopped. So think about some of the most powerful platforms we've seen in the respective gens. Like, for example, the Neo Geo. You know, during the Sega Genesis Super NES gen, Neo Geo was the definitive console that literally pushed arcade-level graphic qualities in your home. Like, true to life, it matched the arcades. But no one really cared. Atari Jaguar, CDI, 3DO. None of these platforms are even relevant. So the top five platforms is PlayStation 2, PlayStation 1, two handhelds, DS and Game Boy, and Nintendo Wii. Does that sound like power dominates gaming? Not in any perspective. Not everybody's going to relegate to, oh, but fanboys. Fuck the fanboy conversation. Let's talk real shit. Let's talk about the shit that people, when they walk into the store, what do they come out with? What do they walk out with? When they go on Amazon.com and click buy, what are they clicking? Because that's the shit that matters. Because when that product sells more, guess what the developers are looking at? They're looking at the product that sells more. They're not looking at the specs as their number one determination. Sure, developers want good specs so they can make their games. But they're not going to override specs for money on the sales of their games. So what are the people walking out with? That's it. If you guys are arguing and trying to make this argument to protect your favorite plastic based on Twitter conversation, social media, you're failing your preferred plastic because that don't move the needle. What are people walking into the store, and when they walk out, what do they have in their hands? That's it. Because that's what the industry is noticing. That is what publishers are looking at. That's what developers are looking at. Because like it or not, they're not doing this shit for free. They need money. The work and the hours, the 60 hours, 70 hours, 80-hour work weeks that they put in is for a reason to make money. Because they pay rent. They own houses. They got car payments. They got kids that go to school. They got all that stuff. None of this is charity for any of us. It's work. What are customers going in, and what are they walking out with at the end of the day? All right? Power is not that major factor. And as you can see, the top five platforms, cut it out. That's proof right there. That's not an opinion. That's not emotional social media bullshit. That is straight up facts. And each and every one of those platforms, people bought a lot of games for those platforms, so they were playing them. Period. All right? So I'm telling you now, this is this message, all right? Power is not going to help the next Xbox Anaconda. It's just not. All right? And to be honest, to me, Microsoft is not interested in making their next Xbox into a high-selling platform. Their message is just simply they made another device. That's all it is. That's all it will be. It's just another device among a sea of devices. You know? And that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's how they want to handle gaming from here on out. They want to handle gaming where it's just a bunch of devices and all their games are accessible and you get what you get. But this whole thing about Xbox Anaconda versus PlayStation 5, there is no console war next gen. There is no Anaconda could take back. There is none. Because Microsoft is not making the decisions. They're not making the moves to put that console in that type of position. They're simply not. That's just how it is. They're not interested in making the next Anaconda the number one selling console. They're not doing those simple moves. And you're going to be disappointed in that, right? Again, at the end of the day, what comes from the power? It's the games. You know, if you ain't talking about games ultimately, if you ain't curving that power conversation and translating it in how the games come from, next gen is going to be a terrible long gem for you. You know, it's going to be hard for you guys. But anyway, this is your boy Porter Rock 77. Let me know what you think. You know, if you're new to the channel, subscribe. Again, stay tuned for my Days Gone initial impressions. Well, impressions, you know, sometime next week and whatever. Okay? But anyway, you guys enjoy your day and happy gaming and happy weekend. Peace.